Welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Seymour with the Optimal Response Initiative, ORI. Stay alert, stay alive, and thrive. The training continues. So today we are talking about extremes and the continuum response line, the ORI continuum response line, came into existence to help me find a way to step away from the extremes. And I know I've said it before, I liken it to the dimmer switch my grandparents used to have in their dining room. You could punch it on real quick if you needed to, let there be light. You could also, however, based on context, dial it up or dial it down to fit the situation in the most optimal way. So the continuum response line from worst all the way to optimal, lowercase better, to the 50-yard line, capital better, from the 50-yard line all the way to optimal. These are the little tick marks of the variations that we use to find how to optimally respond in the midst of these moments in our day-to-day life. It's not that we are totally on or totally off. It's not that we totally succeed or fail. It's not that we blew that or that we hit a home run necessarily, though, I mean, I'm not against hitting home runs. But as human beings, we don't typically struggle with, being too positive. We usually struggle with being too negative, and it's the negative extremes. There's a lot of continuums in the Optimal Response Initiative. We've got the ORI Continuum Response Line, which we use as a tool to ask ourselves where we are and what direction do we want to move. There are other continuums, such as with emotes, from lower intensity to higher intensity, all the different variations, the synonyms of an emote word, an emotion, from lower intensity to higher intensity, from 1 to 100. I've talked about stress being a request for energy, and stress, we can experience stress, which is a request for energy, from 1 to 100. It's not that stress is positive or negative. It's not that stress is good or bad. We have stress in our day-to-day life, which is a request for energy. I've said before, as we are breathing, that is a stress. And that's a good stress because we are here. And if I'm going to stand up, that's, dealing with gravity. So that is an increased request for energy to deal with additional gravity as I go to stand up. So what other continuums have we talked about in the Optimal Response Initiative? We've talked about being inward focused or externally focused. In chapter 9 of the Optimal Response Initiative, it's internal versus external location of control. And we are working to increase self-awareness so that we can operate more from an internal location of control versus an external location of control. If I am stuck in a knee-jerk reaction trap, I am reacting to the external as if it has more power over me than I have within myself to optimally respond. So the example I use often is if it's raining outside and I'm going to be externally controlled, then I'm going to say, oh man, it's horrible weather, makes my joints, my titanium, makes everything hurt more. It's going to be a bad day. So the external is bossing me around, basically. I'm allowing the external to boss me around. I'm operating from an external location of control versus an internal location of control. An internal location of control is where I'm going to acknowledge, okay, it is raining outside. I am dealing with joint things, pain, or, whatever the sit is today, whatever the situation, where we're going, what we're doing, what's going on, the requests for energy, our perceived stress about it, our thoughts, our emotes, varying intensities of emotes. I can respond from an internal location of control, however, acknowledging the rain, but then deciding how I'm going to think and feel and be as far as managing my thoughts and emotions. Remember, I can't make myself not have less than optimal thoughts, and I can't make myself not have emotions that I don't want to have. However, I can be aware of when I have them, I can catch them, I can manage them, and I can do something with them. I can optimally respond. I acknowledge that it's raining. Not my favorite weather. It makes the pain hurt worse. And, that's just not even true because I'm from Washington State. I actually love the rain. It's just an example I use a lot, is that if the rain is going to make my pain increase, and I'm stuck in an external trap, I'm going to be, having a bad day based on the rain. I can have an optimal day despite in the midst of the fact that it's raining. So I'm going to acknowledge that it's raining. I'm going to then say, you know what, it's raining. I acknowledge it. I'm going to do the best I can with where I am and what I have. I'm going to, manage the pain. I'm going to work on some things inside. I'm going to work on my physical therapy, get that, have some movement going on, use some of my natural creams and take my fish oil like I'm supposed to. And we're going to do the best we can today with what we have to work with. So that's acknowledging the rain, but operating from an internal location of control. Okay, so that's another continuum from internal to external. Another term, or some terms that are a little, I think they sound strange. I have a hard time saying them, but the last podcast on creativity, I talked about a tool, the space-time bridging meditation practice. And I have used the terms interoceptive and exteroceptive. So the continuum from interoceptive, inward focused, to exteroceptive, externally focused. So to what degree do I have self-awareness about internal states, thoughts, mood, emotions, my physiology, senses? To what degree am I focused on my perceptive is a word we all understand. So for me, that makes more sense. Interoceptive. I am being perceptive of my internal states. Exteroceptive, I am being more perceptive of external things going on around me. So from an interoceptive to an exteroceptive focus and awareness, and if we consider that to be a continuum, we want to be equally balanced on that, with being aware of what's going on within, but also being aware of what is going on within my immediate environment, a little bit further out, the community, the world in general. And we can even get, existential on ourselves here and, say beyond this physical body, beyond the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, and be from this life beyond this life. That's really getting out there. However, it is a continuum from my interoceptive awareness, perceiving things from focused on the internal versus perceiving the external, from my immediate environment all the way out to beyond the atmosphere and into the stratosphere. Okay. To put it more bluntly is, am I going to be really focused on the external stuff going on in my environment? For example, stay alert, stay alive, hyper focused on the potential for threats. Am I going to be hyper focused on my internal states, what's going on with my chronic pain, with my titanium, being so hyper focused on my pain that I can't exist or be in the moment with myself, with people I care about, or things that I'm trying to do and work on and to contribute and to pay things forward? How do I find the balance between being self-aware, taking care of internal states, managing that, but not letting it control me, and then also being aware of external states and things going on, people, places, things, and being a part of that, but not letting it, totally swallow me whole? So from an interoceptive to an exteroceptive awareness, this is also a continuum. And we've talked about that with meditation. One thing I want to state, and I find this is a common statement, question, or experience by people that I work with. even as a human being, I experienced it myself. Human beings tend to like extremes because when we go extreme, we find a very quick answer. Extremes give us a quick answer. So, when we found out that my son Jacob was profoundly deaf, we didn't have a history of deafness in the family. And so we didn't know where it came from. We were shocked and surprised and upset and all kinds of things. But then we started looking for answers. Well, answers, yes, what do we do? But we were really hyper focused on how did this happen? What did we do wrong that caused this to occur? What did I do as the mom regarding my health, my body, my mindsets, my emotional states, my physiology? I was thinking I only drank a little bit of decaf coffee, like half a cup, maybe. So looking for blame, looking for answers, looking for someone to blame. I definitely blamed myself, stating that, I was stressed out, I cried a lot, I had a high perceived level of stress. And so while I was pregnant, so I blamed myself for the deafness. So now it's not true that I caused the deafness. It turns out that I have a recessive gene and my husband has a recessive gene for Usher syndrome. And then it expressed in our son as Usher syndrome, which causes profound deafness and variations of vision loss, retinitis pigmentosa, which has resulted in everyone being diagnosed with RP, retinitis pigmentosa, as becoming legally blind. So did I cause that? No, I did not cause that. Did my stress cause my son to be deaf and have this diagnosis of Usher syndrome? No, because if that's the case, every child born would be born with Usher syndrome if stress, quote unquote, stress is what caused it, right? Because what pregnant human do you know that is not stressed at some point? And stress is not bad. Stress is a request for energy. Definitely growing a human within your physiology is going to request more energy of the physiology. And so stress from 1 to 100, it's stress, it's a request for energy. If stress caused every baby to be born with Usher syndrome, then every single baby in the world would have Usher syndrome. So you see the logic. I mean, it wasn't very logical. I was in a very emotional state, but I was looking for answers. I wanted an answer. And so answers give us a sense of control. Even if the answer is absolutely smack dab on worst on the ORI continuum response line. I mean, that is the worst answer I could think of as far as, why is my son deaf? So I see myself doing this. I see other people doing this continually. We look for, it's like we hunt down, we crave, we desire the extremes, but we want an extremely quick answer is really what it is. We want an answer so we can have a sense of control over this very chaotic, challenging, painful, beyond our control situation. We want an answer. But having an extremely quick answer for ourselves does not help, because it's the quality of the answer that is more important than getting a quick answer. My husband is a math teacher, and his students sometimes will just be going quickly with their math problems and just writing down any old answer, and that's a no-go, because they need to work the problem, learn the problem, figure out the steps, and come up with the highest quality of answer that they can as they learn the process of pre-algebra, algebra, And we all know this, but when it comes to day-to-day life, we want an answer. Not having an answer makes us feel out of control, increases anxiety. Um, it just feels better to get hyper focused on finding an answer and finding one quickly. And then when we have one, we like tight knuckle grip that thing and say, aha, there we go, there's my answer. And then what is that very worst answer? Is that our marching orders for going through day-to-day life? Like, I got my marching orders and here's the answer. And so now I'm going to give myself a really hard time the rest of my life with this really worst, extremely worst answer for myself, because what, I have a sense of control. And so that makes me feel better. Does it really? No, makes me feel worse long term. Every day that I tight fist hold on to that worst answer, I feel worse and worse and worse. And if you think about the continuums, from worst to optimal, I am like sucking wind at negative worst at this point, going further and further into the pit. And when you think about emotions, emotes, being on a continuum, being on an intensity from 1 to 100, different hues of color, different percentages, different intensities, from less intense to higher intense. I'm living in the extreme emotional states as well, which that's not enjoyable. Extreme anger, extreme hurt, extreme rage, fighting with everybody, including myself in the mirror, extreme helplessness, extreme anxiety, just spiraling, spiraling, spiraling. And yeah, that's making me feel worse and worse and worse as well. And so the emotional, the emote continuums, I'm in the either the plus 1000 or the minus 1000s, however you want to look at it, depending on the emote. And when you think about being focused on an internal state or an external state, very perceptive about my internal states, like thinking of my thoughts, my emotions, blaming myself. I'm very internally focused. If I'm focused on the external, and this, maybe we're stuck in a bad trap somewhere in the middle between internal and external, but really focused on the external too. Like, I've got to fix this. Of course, I've got to fix it. So I'm focused on me having to fix it, but also all the external demands, like, for example, with my son, the appointments, the diagnoses, the medical equipment, the insurance company, the people in my immediate surroundings who are happy, who are laughing, who are going about their quote unquote normal day-to-day lives. I mean, I'm not proud to admit this, but when I was going through all that stuff and just in really extreme states and really sucking wind, and I mean, happy people made me mad. Happy people made me sad. I mean, I remember there were these women walking by. I don't even know where I was. They had cute outfits on. I mean, they looked rested. They had shoes and bags that matched and that were probably some brand name that I mean, my friends tell me what the brand names are because it's pretty hilarious. Kate Spade, I didn't know that was a brand. I thought that was a person someone was talking about as far as someone in the community or someone's neighbor. And of course, that got a good laugh out of my friends. When my grandmother, my husband's grandmother, Tina, this is years ago, I used to just work and go to school all the time and sleep in my day clothes. And so every now and then she's like, Christine, you need to come out and do something. You can't just work and go to school all the time and take care of kids and work and go to school all the time. So she wanted to take me to a movie to see gosh, is that old movie, The Devil Wears Prada. And I forget what year that was. I mean, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe, I'm guessing. Well, I told her, I'm like, Grandma, I don't want to go see that about some big snake on a plane that's like attacking people. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's not a snake. It's about a girl who takes a job at a fashion place. Prada's a brand. She's like, you really need to get out more. So I didn't even know that Prada was a brand. I didn't know that Kate Spade was a brand. And Grandma wanted me to get out more and kind of get beyond myself. Um, so back to my point, when I was going through that really hard time many years ago. By the way, my son is fine and doing great, and he's 24 and he has 2 cochlear implants and he can see, and he is a fine young man. And but that was a tough time in the midst of the intensity of all of that and all those extremes. But I remember seeing these women, this group of women, they looked cute. They had cute outfits on, their bags and their shoes matched. And I mean, I just wanted to trip them. I just wanted to trip them or something. It's like they're not that I did, don't worry. Um, it just infuriated me that they were so happy and I was so miserable. It infuriated me that they had time and energy to wear cute clothes and the money to buy cute bags and shoes. And I was trying to figure out how to get, batteries at buck 50 a piece, 3 batteries per day for the implant, and just not in an optimal place. You think about all 5 areas of health, physical health, cognitive, our thoughts, emotional, spiritual, social. Um, I was in a deficit. I was in a deficit in all areas of health. And yet in front of me, I had very real things and real requests for energy, for my son, for my family. Do you know that 70% of marriages with children with special needs end up in divorce? Um, Relationships are hard on a good day. And when you add to the mix the things that we don't choose, struggles and hardships, especially for our children, it creates a high degree of stress, in all other areas, financial, physical energy, time-wise, managing relationships, let alone if you have other children and things going on. Um, it's just a lot, right? So I wanted to trip happy, cute people when I was going through such a hard time. And I didn't, but I was just mad at the world. I was mad at myself because, even though I knew logically that me crying about, you know, being stressed out about pregnancy or whatever it might be did not cause Usher syndrome to exist and for my son to have the expressed gene of it. Um, I knew that logically, but just because we know something logically does not mean, we can know something, we can have knowledge, but it doesn't equate to emotional free reality. And also, especially when we're in the midst of going through things, like moving through things with demands and things on us and trying to keep the lights on and try to, have a fun movie night with the kids. And it's just rough when you're sucking wind in day to day, right? And we get stuck in these extremes. The extremes, though, give us a quick answer, which is great and fine for an emergency situation. Quick answer in an emergent situation is necessary, and awesome. In day-to-day life for thriving, we want a quick answer so that we have a sense of control. But when we come up with knee-jerk, quick, rushed answers, the quality of that answer is the worst quality we could muster up. And if we hold on to that with a tight fist because it gives us a sense of control, that sense of control is going to continue to control us to the point where we feel worse and worse and worse as we exist in these extremes, the extremes of internal, external, the extreme intensities of emotions, the extreme thoughts that are closer to the worst on the continuum, smack dab on worst of the continuum response line, the extreme worst answer, the knee-jerk reaction traps, the extremes. They give us a quick answer, but that quick answer is not optimal. It is the opposite of optimal. So I want to, today I'm just talking about extremes, but I want to encourage you and I want to remind you, I want to also challenge you to listen for, look for, and pay attention to the extremes because they are there so fast and so readily available to wave at you, get your number, give you the hat and the t-shirt of the extremes. And I want to encourage you to say no thank you when the extreme offers you the hat, the t-shirt, the jacket, the tennis shoes, the shoes, and the whole sweatpants, and the sleeping bag, the sheet set, the magnets for your cars, and everything else. The extremes. Say no thank you to that and go for the optimal. Recognize that the extremes are there. They give you a kind of a bookend of, this end of the extreme and this end of the extreme. But know that optimal exists within the continuums of worst to optimal, the continuums of lower intensity to higher intensity of emotions, different hues and colors, intensities of emotes, which are the intel for what we need in day-to-day life for thriving situations. Notice the extremes of whether you are very externally focused or very internally focused, and use your skills, specifically use all of them, but the time-space bridging meditation, where you are inward focused, you're focused on your hand, you're focused on maybe something further out, and then you're focused on the horizon, and then closing your eyes. And I've created a meditation for this, so I will have the link for this that you can utilize if you'd like. But then you also then close your eyes at the end and you imagine yourself as a speck, a very small speck on the earth, floating through the massive expanse of the universe. And so the space-time bridging exercise helps us hone and tone and train for being aware of internal states and external states, being aware of the continuums for thriving and recognizing the ebb and flow, being curious and courageous about where we are on these continuums, and practicing the awareness so we can find that fulcrum of balance for thriving. And simply being aware is the point. We want to recognize the ebb and flow of the extremes, finding the balance in the midst of our day-to-day lives, moment by moment, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, evening by evening. Noticing the ebb and flow, consider it like the waves of the ocean, the breeze. Consider it an ebb and flow. Think of it as the way sound travels, the way, well, music is sound, right? But the ebb and flow of the fulcrum of balance for thriving. I want to challenge you this week and the next week and the rest of your life to Find the extremes, and you'll find them quick because they're there. And then challenge yourself to be courageous and curious about being aware of where you are and focusing on the fulcrum of balance for thriving. And for a practical tool, use that space-time bridging meditation. Also use NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, which is going to increase dopamine 65% in the nigrostriatal pathway. Use things like the body scan. Practice diaphragmatic breathing, sitting outside, noticing what you notice with your senses for enjoyable things. What do you see that you enjoy? What do you smell that you enjoy? What do you feel? What textures, what temperatures do you notice of what you're sitting on? Or do you hear the birds? Practice using your senses for thriving. Recognize where you're at. Know the extremes are there, but know that you have the power and the ability to thrive in your day-to-day life by choosing to focus on finding the balance and looking for and experiencing, because you're simply aware and looking for it, the fulcrum of balance for thriving. And on that note, I want to say, stay alert, stay alive, and thrive. The training and the thriving does continue. See you soon. Bye-bye.